Hey, thank you for joining us online today. We hope that this message challenges you and encourages you to experience Jesus together. If you would like to give, you can visit our website at www.hillcrestchurch.info and download our app for a fast, secure, and easy way to give.
Thanks for mingling. I just want to say one thing real quick. Tammy mentioned we're looking for hosts to host one of our Roots groups. We need like a dozen. We have a bunch of groups that we're looking to have, and so I just want to put it out there. If you're at all inclined to hosting people from the church or being hospitable, then this is the job for you. We'll give you all the training. We'll let you know what we're hoping for. It'll be easy. But if you're interested, please sign up for our connection calendar on your way out today. Okay? I need you to remember way back, probably to your teenage years, when your parents went out of town for the first time without you, and you guys being turned to the house. Do you remember this moment? And I grew up, maybe this isn't the best thing to bring up to church, but I grew up in the house party days with kid and play, and that's exactly what I pictured. Like, okay, some of you do get that reference. But like you remember, there's always the instructions that mom and dad have for you, right? Like, take care of the dog, take the trash out, do the dishes, that kind of stuff. And you're like, I got this, and you're listening because you know that deep down you don't care, right? Like you're like, I got it, but deep down you're like, I don't got it, like I'm not, And I remember when we let our kids do that, and we'd come home and like they slept in our bed, and like like I was like, yeah, because we have the bigger team. It just was like, yeah, they can have a little life. I love it. The passage we're going to look at today is Paul's version of that to you with your faith. This is a call to maturity. This is I'm not here to parent you, so I'm inviting you to step in the role of taking care of your own faith. And you can do this. You can do this, but it's an invitation for you to grow up a little bit, to mature a little bit, not in a condescending way whatsoever. So that's the main thrust. That's kind of the idea behind what we're going to talk about today. So, and I learned my lesson. I'm not going to make fun of any other football team today, because I did that last week. I'm looking right at you, because I thought your team, and you said, wow. I was like, yeah, I was so proud of it. And then my team got obliterated. So, we're not going to talk about football. God saw that. So we'll see what happens today. So, just mess with you. But this is Philippians 2, verse 12. We're going to start it, and I want to just go a couple verses at a time instead of read the whole passage this time. So we're going to look at a few at a time and go from there, okay? So, dear friends, you always followed my instructions when I was with you. And now that I'm away, it is even more important. Work hard to show the results of your salvation, obeying God with deep reverence and fear. For God is working in you, giving you the desire and the power to do what pleases Him. Okay, so slowly we'll just go through these couple. And by the way, I did a bad job of this. If you have your Fire Bible, this is starting on page 1933. If you don't have one, I would totally recommend you get one. Hopefully you're looking at your Bible. We do have it on screen for you. I think it's best when you're looking at your actual physical Bible so that you can do this later at home. Hopefully this isn't the only time you're looking at or hearing the Bible. But this passage, first and foremost, is about accountability. You are accountable for your faith to God. And so, if that's the case, there ought to be some visible transformation somewhere in your life from following Jesus. And it starts with the salvation. So Paul says, work hard to show the results of your salvation, obeying God with deep fear and reverence. So a couple thoughts on salvation first and foremost. Your salvation, it is a seed that is planted in faith that will grow roots and it will bear fruit as it's watered by God. That is what happens with these things. Just like when you do that exact same thing in your yard at home, if your seed gets water and it gets sunlight, it will grow. Yes, there's some things you can do to aid it, but it will do what it does. The same thing happens in our lives when we accept that seed of faith, that salvation. And God takes care of the watering, Scripture tells us. There's things you can do to nurture, and there's things you can do to sabotage that growth. So, it is a past, present, and future-oriented spiritual and physical thing that is taking place in your life. And so, I want to explain it this way. Just like when a baby is born, and then it develops, and then eventually, hopefully, matures, the same process happens in your life with your soul and with your salvation. Your salvation, it starts. That's like when the baby is born, but you're only born once. So the salvation starts. That deals with your past. Everything from your past is now washed away, it's cleansed away. You are forgiven. But then there is this ongoing, present-oriented transformation where you are following the roots and the fruit of that seed that's planted, the salvation. There should be some change. And then, of course, there's the future benefit of going and being in heaven with Jesus. Now, if we view our salvation like it's an achievement, like it's a trophy that we've won, then we start to see it that way. We start to brag about it. We start to feel like, I'm good. I did it. I'm saved. I got the salvation thing. You don't. And it becomes an us and them thing that happens inside our mind. I grew up in an era where this was a big deal. This was like, oh God, you got saved. And it was almost like we just needed to hear that you're saved, and then after that, we really don't care. We want you to be saved, and then you can go back to do whatever you want to do, because that's all we want. We want to make sure you're saved, your eternity's fine, but your present doesn't get impacted at all whatsoever. That is a very short-sighted, incomplete view of what Jesus is really trying to do in all of humankind. And also, in a sense, when you think about it, it kind of minimizes his death on the cross and his resurrection. It just makes it seem like, oh, it's just all about me feeling guilt-free to do whatever I want to do in life. That's not the case. Not the case whatsoever. And so, there was that side of, oh, I got saved, I'm good to go. I have it, you don't. I hope you figure that out. I don't care though, because I'm good. And that mentality is not very biblical. And that is a very past-focused mentality. A lot of people have salvations that is purely past-focused. The reality, though, is it should be present and future-focused, not past-focused, because we've moved past that. So, after your initial salvation, your Savior is attempting to mature you to become someone who experiences Jesus daily and then who deeply, authentically becomes like Him. That is that present and that future focus. The results of your salvation that Paul is talking about here, that is really about allowing Jesus to transform you. It's this theological process we call sanctification. You don't really know about that if you don't want to, but it's the idea that God, He saved you, but He wants to continue to change you. That is the fruit of your salvation. It's allowing Jesus to transform you. In one sense, when I became a follower of Jesus, yes, from God's sight, because I had accepted that salvation, my past was washed clean, but I still had all the bad habits. Are you following me? And so, part of the ongoing change is leave what Jesus says, leave your life of sin and follow me. So for me, it was leave a life of dishonesty and become a person who speaks and lives in the truth. For some of you, it might be leave a life of self-medicating and enter into a life of soul care, where Jesus now cares and heals your soul, and you need to learn some self-care there. Leave your life of immorality and now enter into this life of purity. Leave your life of gossip and become a person of gracious speech. Leave your life of judgment and become a person of kindness and compassion. And so that's the idea that, yeah, our salvation, it wasn't just a one-moment thing. That was the seed that was planted. But the ongoing branching out and bearing fruit is who you are becoming. And I want to encourage you today from a pastoral perspective. Paul is encouraging this church and our church now to not just think of our salvation as a one and done, I'm good to go. If I get hit by a bus, I'll be with Jesus, which is great. That's not all it is. There's so much more to following and knowing Jesus and seeing this salvation play out in your life. And it really has to do with who you're becoming. So when he says work hard to show the results of your salvation, obeying God with deep reverence and fear, a lot of what he's talking about is don't get in the way of what God is doing. Allow him to do it. I have a yard at my house. There's a house, and then there's a yard around it, like many of you have around your house. Some of you guys have yards. Okay, great. So, and you don't have to have a yard to connect to this illustration, but some of you just have a potted plant. I try to keep up on the weeds, and so you use the weed killer. And sometimes you can accidentally let the overspray of the weed killer get onto something that you really care about. And so you have now prevented life from happening in something that you really wanted to keep. We kind of do that same thing sometimes. Going to church, showing up, and just being past-oriented on our salvation, we prevent, kind of like weed killer would do, we prevent the growth that God could do in our life if we are not careful. And sometimes it really just comes down to our attitude, or really to our mindset that I don't need to change, I just need Jesus to take away my guilt. That's really all I'm looking for, so I can sleep better at night. When Paul says, when he makes that comment, deep reverence and fear, deep reverence is like worshipful respect. And fear, it's not fear like horror movie fear, it's respect fear. What Paul's trying to say to us is take this very seriously. He's not looking for people to just sign up. Like, I'm a Christian, and you check a box on some kind of college application. What he's really looking for are people who genuinely want to know Jesus and allow him to work in our life. And so in a few minutes, that's what that passage is, what that part is right there. And it springboards us into this next chunk of scriptures I'm going to share with you, and I'm going to intro it by saying, the way we treat one another reflects what Jesus is doing inside of me. The way I treat you shows what Jesus is doing in me. And the way you treat me reflects what Jesus has done and is doing in you. So, verse 14, he says, do everything without complaining and arguing, so that no one can criticize you. Do you feel convicted yet? No? Yeah. Live clean, innocent lives as children of God, shining like bright lights in a world full of crooked and perverse people. Now, I want to make you feel a little bit better about your life. When he says do everything without complaining and arguing, what everything is he talking about? It's everything he said so far from verse 1. Now, you might read into it and be like, I can't ever complain or argue again. You shouldn't. But that's not exactly what he's saying. So some of you are like, oh, hang on, because I was really going to be so irritated. You're going to start complaining about Paul and the Bible. The context is about what he has just spoken about. However, I want to say this, though. Have you noticed that complaining and arguing, they do two things? One, it's contagious, and B, it opens you up to criticism. Have you noticed these things before in your life about complaining and criticizing? I've noticed this. Contagious is pretty obvious. Certain places you go, people can be very complaining in certain places. And it's interesting how one person will complain, and people who want to complain are like, they gravitate toward it, like, you just got a new puppy. Like, oh yeah, I hate that too. We all hate it. Isn't it the dumbest thing that the people who don't want to look at your puppy, they don't want to complain, they go back to work, and the other people are like, then they kind of just gather around this complaint circle, and that's kind of what they do, and they compliment one another, but then they also complain about everything. So we obviously get the contagious thing. It happens, but the criticism is that complaining, once you run out of what you're irritated about, then you've got to take it to the next step. Then we become critical and not constructive. And that can become very, very hurtful. What I've also found, though, is if I go critical, people begin to reevaluate me in terms of what I've just been critical with. So if I go complaining, people start to see me in light of it, they reevaluate me with my own complaints. Oh, you complain about this, well, you do it too. Have you ever been on you don't have to not be, but we've all experienced that at some point too. And if we go critical about someone or something or the job they're doing, immediately it opens us up to criticism. And I just have noticed, especially because we're all so upset in life in general, or not us, but everyone else in the world, everywhere you go, they're all upset, everyone can be noticed. So complainers earn that label on their own. They just do. But the critical thing, that comes from a deeper place in our heart. That's something we really got to pay attention about. The question is, what are you being known for? What picture are you painting with your words to people? Because they're seeing what you're saying. They're seeing how you treat them. And so, what are you known for? Are you known for being constructive, being kind and compassionate? Or are you known for being complaining? Are you known for being critical about people? Do people want to come to you? Do they feel like you're a safe, trustworthy person? Or do they feel like they're only just going to get common sense, like a starting to feel stupid approach to whatever, and therefore they don't go to you? Another layer to this is how we treat one another inside the church speaks volumes to others outside of the church. Whether they're in the faith or not, sadly, it is the truth. And so if we are going to hate one another, we're going to be critical of one another, we're going to complain about one another, we're going to gossip about one another, word gets out. So unfortunately, what happens is people don't want to go and be a part and try and find Jesus in a place where it's toxic and nasty like that. So what happens is we have to be very aware of how we treat and how we view one another. We all have lights. I brought my phone to illustrate this. But sometimes what we do, by the way we treat one another, is we hide it. It's still there. You can see it. Put it in the shadow. You can see that my light is on, burning through battery. But if the lights went out, this would not help me at all guide through or illuminate through all my life. This is where a lot of us are. We've bought into that initial salvation. Jesus has saved us. We're good, but then we treat everyone else like crap. We treat you like you're targets. We're totally fine gossiping about you. We're criticizing you. We're complaining about you. And so we've diminished the light of Jesus that is trying to, he wants us to bear to the world. People can see it, but we can't. They hear it, we don't. And then crisis hits. No one was there for me. No one helped me. God wasn't in the dark. I couldn't tell God. Couldn't tell if he was helping me at all. Yeah, but what we've done is by the way we have treated one another, we have taken our life, we've hid it in our pocket. There is purpose to this direction that Paul is giving to his church and that we need to take for ourselves. There's purpose, because what he's saying is, do everything without complaining and arguing so that no one can criticize you. Live clean, innocent lives as children of God, shining like bright lights in a world full of crooked and perverse people. Crooked and perverse, that's just saying one thing but meaning another. When you get down to the biblical language, that's really what it's about. That's really what he's talking about there. What he's asking us to do is, you've got Jesus in you. You've got light that comes out of you because you live in a dark world where people say one thing but they mean something else. Don't be like that. Live clean and pure, which means you say this because you mean this. You're loving because you have love. That's part of the light that comes out of you. You're compassionate because you've experienced compassion from Jesus. That's part of the light that comes out of you. And so that's the purpose of this. It's that as we become like him, we shine more light, which helps guide us through difficult, painful situations. But it also draws others to Jesus within us. God has you where he has you, in the home or the work or the social environment that he has you in, because he wants you to live like this, so that you can guide through life, but also you can draw others to him that's in you. Do you realize that? Sometimes we lament over the things that we have to do, the workplaces we have to go, all the things we're stuck in. But the reality is, Jesus is like, honestly, I want you there. I put something in you because there are people around you who need what you have. But if we're focused on ourselves or on the past or on everything we don't like about everyone else, we miss it. We hide the light in the pocket, and it does nobody any good when we need it. This last section here, hold firmly to the word of life. Then on the day of Christ's return, I will be proud that I did not run the race in vain, and that my work was not useless. Can you imagine working on something really, really hard and then just destroying it? Years ago, I asked my nephew if I could tell you the story, and he said yes. So, years ago, our family and our adjoining family, my wife's brother, her family, so his family, all that, whatever. Our families went to the Oregon coast. We're walking around all day. It's lunchtime. We haven't figured out where we want to eat yet, places we want to go. The lines are really long, so we're starting to get hangry. So we finally find a pizza place, sit down. Everyone's ready to eat like a half hour before, so you know what it feels like. So their pizza comes up. My nephew, he gets up to get the pizza, and I don't know why he did it this way, but he gets the pizza and he holds it over his head like a champion, and then he spills it. All over himself. And I'm standing right behind him, and it tips toward me, and I'm like, just trying to guide myself, and then he compensates and just spills it right down. And if I recall, he had some very expensive shoes on. They got some pepperoni. But the best part about it was that I got to watch the faces and the shock and the horror, mild disgust. It was as if we had walked into a restaurant and just dropped a stink bomb right in the middle of their like dining area. Looking at the dude who had just made the pizza and put it out, the look on his face. I just wish I had a camera and I could have just captured this whole moment for you. And my poor nephew, I mean, like, he did not intend to do that. Obviously, he was 11 at the time. You get how it works. But it was one of those moments where we have sat all this time. We have wandered for miles through Oregon, and here we are, come to sit down and enjoy this pizza that is now on the floor. the sense of it's all wasted. It's all gone. Now, to the pizza place's credit, the dude literally like had that look on his face of like, you're kidding me, and then just turned right around and made another pizza for free, which I was like, that's pretty impressive. But I remember just thinking, all that hard work, all that anticipation, everyone's ready to eat, and now it's ruined and it's gone. Imagine that with your faith. You know, none of us ended up here in this church by ourselves. You had to hear about Jesus from someone else. I have yet to meet someone where Jesus himself appeared in their bedroom like a superstar and was like, I'm good, I'm God. I'm going to show you the way. I have yet to meet that person. And don't introduce yourself after. That's too late now. It's not going to work. All of us, we are here because probably a lot of people prayed and shared and invited, and you saw things online and you felt like, okay, finally, whatever it took, there was a process to it, but it always involved other people giving to you what they have experienced and what they have learned, and their prayers, their time, their faith, all that kind of stuff. Generations of people have invested and labored into this faith that we have, and then they passed it down to us. We participated in something that we did not invent. We did not create it. We are sharing in the beauty and the benefits of it that someone else did all the hard work to give to us. We received it from someone else. And when we live it authentically, working with Jesus toward unity and shining brightly in purity and in innocence, we honor their labors, and then God is glorified. It reveals joy within us. It's been there the whole time, but it reveals it. So are you holding tightly to that word of life that someone else has passed on to you? Does your life reflect that? This is such an important aspect, because it wasn't just for us to have and to hold and to keep and to take with us. It is also for us to share. So whom are you inviting? Whom are you praying for? Who are you working with God, in tandem with God, to see them experience what you have and what you get to experience as well? When I became a follower of Jesus, I knew one friend. One friend invited me to our youth group. I was in high school. So one friend invited me. And then at that exact same youth group, which we lived in a bigger area that it just kind of motioned into it'd be like living over on the east side, where all the towns just merge into Tacoma before you realize it. And it was like that. So it was a pretty large, pretty populated area. There was a lot of churches, a lot of youth groups. I liked being a part of none of them, but my friend invited me, I felt guilty, so I went, and I found Jesus, and then I just kept going. And when I was there, I met other people that for a couple of years I had interacted with, and I found out that they had been praying for me to come to know Jesus. It's a weird thing when you find out people have been praying and they've been talking about you behind your back to God. It's a good thing, but it's a weird thing. And it's when you stop and think, like, I met and knew a lot of people in a lot of different high schools. And yet, 3 of these people that I know of were praying for me to come to know Jesus. We're all in the same youth group, but they didn't know each other. That's really weird. Unless you recognize that it's Jesus trying to draw me to him and using the light that these other people have. That's why we want to be a church that's praying for other people to come to know Jesus. When I got there, there was something of substance there because they were holding tightly to the word of life. There was light. And so that's what kept me there. This same faith was handed down to me by other people who invested in me before I had a clue what was going on. The question I really have and I want to impart into us is, are we doing the same thing? Because I imagine the story is very similar for you as well. There was a mom, a dad, a grandpa, a grandma, a friend, something, a coworker who shared with you and had prayed for you. Are we doing the same thing? I hope we are. Paul finishes it with this, and Adam, you can play a real life background beat for me. He says, I will rejoice, even if I lose my life, pouring it out like a liquid offering to God. Just like your faithful service is an offering to God. And I want all of you to share that joy. Yes, you should rejoice, and I will share your joy. Paul says rejoice twice and joy twice in just these few words here, these 2 verses. It's a real big part of this. And he says, I don't care if I give my life up. We've already covered that he was fine being with Jesus or being here with the church. And I think some of us, we lose joy, we miss it, because we have forgotten about the others who have invested into us. There is this generational gratitude. The people who have imparted the faith to us. Paul's here right from far away. In a couple weeks, I've invited my former youth pastor, who actually led me to the faith. He's going to come speak in a couple weeks. I've had him and his wife here a few times. But for me, it's a generational gratitude. I'm grateful for the relationship that I have with this individual who years and years ago in California was just pastoring students, trying to introduce as many high school and junior high students to Jesus as he could. I'm one of them. There's others in this room who are part of that group as well. But there's that generational gratitude. I want my church that I get to be a part of to hear from him too. And so we forget that it wasn't just these people who invested into us, but really it was Jesus investing into us through other people. So my former youth pastor, my friends who were praying for me, really it was Jesus reaching to me. It was Jesus investing in me. Same for you. Whoever it was for you, it was Jesus showing you love and investing into you. And he was using other people. I want to remind you, you get to also be the hands and the prayers and the heart of Jesus when you allow yourself to do the same thing. Have we ceased to appreciate those that God has placed around us so that we take them for granted and keep them at a distance? And I know that it's really popular right now to dog the church of the 90s and 2000s. It was never perfect. It's human. Our church now, as great as it is, it's never going to be perfect because it's led by human beings. We're doing our best to follow Jesus, but we're not going to get it right every single step of the way. And yes, there's some wrongs to be corrected, but it wasn't all bad. Are we neglecting the good things? Are we overlooking the people who invested and did good for us, even if we don't appreciate maybe their methods or their style or their words? Have we lost joy in that process of Jesus ministering to us through imperfect people? I think there is such a beauty that Jesus invests into us through the investment of others. And he shares his perfection through imperfected humans to other imperfect humans so that we can then somehow meet a perfect God. It's you investing to others and it's you receiving the investment. I would just say, I want to pray with you, but a great application of this is don't do church alone. Don't keep coming here on Sunday and never meeting anyone and never developing any relationships. One of the easiest things you can do to put this message into practice is go have a piece of pizza downstairs and meet someone you didn't know, or develop a relationship with someone you didn't know. We really made it that easy for you today. And it's not that the pizza's like this incredible pizza. Like, I'm not trying to tear it down. I'm just saying it's about the relationships. It's about who you meet and doing life with them along the way. The food is background. It's important, but it's not the point. So I want to pray with you. Would you take a moment? Would you bow your heads? Would you close your eyes? We're starting groups here in a few weeks. It takes relationships in order to do that. Some of us don't have any relationships in this church yet. That's okay. We're doing everything we can to give you opportunities to create them. Lunch today is one of them. Groups is another one of them. But really, it starts out with your relationships with Jesus. Is there anyone in this room, maybe you've never made that decision to begin that relationship with Jesus? This is where it all starts. This is where it all happens. Everything that we've talked about and sung about, the whole reason we've gathered today is because Jesus, he lived, he died on the cross, he was buried into a tomb, and then 3 days later, he came out of that tomb alive and has been sharing eternal life with us and transformational life with us here on this planet ever since. We are a church today because Jesus is alive and he's sharing great things with us. So maybe you're in a place where you're like, I've been doing life a certain way, and I know what to expect, but I want a great life. I want the life that Jesus promises. I want to know Jesus, and I want to experience it. So if that's you, I want you to just pray this simple prayer. Just say, Jesus, I give you my life. I give you my life. What happens is what we've already talked about. He forgives you of every single thing that's ever happened in the past. And then he gives you, he guides you down a new path toward a future that he has created for you. One that has purpose, that has fulfillment, that has hope, that has love, that has acceptance, that has forgiveness, that has endurance and perseverance and resilience. Now, these are some of the things he has for you. If you're in this room and you prayed that prayer for the first time, I would love to talk to you right afterward. I would love to, because you took the first step and I want to give you the next steps. Thank you for doing that. Jesus, today, for everyone else, we've already made this decision. Jesus, I pray that you would help us to be aware of your presence in our life. And everywhere that we go, may we be people who view our faith differently as no longer the responsibility of someone else, but we are grateful for the investment we've received, and now we take responsibility before you, and we say, this is my faith. I will deepen it, I will grow it, I will allow your salvation to take deeper root in my life and create more fruit in my life. There's areas I know you've been trying to transform in me. I accept those. I will let you change me. I don't know how to do it. It's probably very scary, but I want the life that you have for me. I know you have good things for me. Even in the midst of trouble and stress and anxiety, you still have good things. You have peace. You have strength. You have gifts. I want that today. Lord, for everyone in this room who wants that prayer, Lord, I pray that you would, through the power of your Spirit, work deeply in their heart and life daily to bring about the good things you have for us. Thank you for your love for this church. We are so grateful for it. We love you and trust you. We follow you today. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right, you guys, thanks for being here today. I will dismiss you. I hope you'll join us downstairs for some pizza and some salad and some new relationships that you're going to make. That's the point. Make sure you do that, okay? All right, you guys can go to the station.